Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Over Sharon Show, the best darn show on the internet. I tell you what, I'm joined today
Yes, it
with,
is.
it's right, I'm joined today, as always, with my co-host and dear friend Sharon, who the show is named after. It's a silly pun if you haven't figured it out. And we are here to help people accept the world for the way it is, damn it.
Everything is awesome.
Yeah, there you go. Everything, it's all contained in that song from the Lego movie. Just listen to that, and that's the secret to enlightenment. So thanks for listening this week, and we'll talk to you later. No.
Ciao.
So Sharon, I have a quote. That's right, and you're going to pull a card. So
Oh, yes.
my quote is very, very famous. Everyone's probably heard it, and it's from Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and it's "There's nothing
How
to
dare
fear."
you? I'm just kidding.
How Delano you? Yeah. There is nothing to fear but fear itself. And while you're shuffling the cards, I'll say, we talk about a lot of people on the show and we don't always agree with everything. And I would have to say we
They say
probably
or
agree.
do.
We totally probably agree with nothing that FDR
FDR
did.
did.
But, these people that are in
Oops.
these positions of power, they do let some truth in and out sometimes. And sometimes they use it to grapple their own agendas, and obviously he's probably doing that, but the quote itself really stands by itself. It doesn't really need any explanation, but that's what we're going to talk about, because last week we talked about, are we building the Tower of Babel with the civilization, and where are all these crazy places where it could be headed to? So I think that quote was really important, because today we're going to talk about solutions. And we kind of left a little cliffhanger at the end of last week's episode, but I think we're going to have to put that one off about what the whole reset realm trigger could be. We have a guest, but didn't line up this week. So we're going to talk about solutions, and which I think is really important, because we don't want to just be fear porn spewers and just judging and accusing people and scaring people. So we're going to talk about what people can do and what we've done in our own lives to, once we came across this whole craziness and we woke up to what was really going on, what are the steps that we're taking in our lives, and what are the steps that people can take in their lives? And the first one really is to not have fear,
Oops, sorry
because
about that.
no, that's fine. Because I really feel that at the end of the day, if you're not in fear, just like Lot in Sodom and Gomorrah, there was one good man. He was living according with the truth, and God sent his angels in, just like we said last week, to save him. So you could look at that in multiple ways. And I think that it just goes, it's like when people say there's always a way provided, there's always going to be a way out for people who aren't in fear and see the truth and aren't around judging people. But we'll get to all that stuff. Do you have a card for us there, Sharon?
Well, what's funny is as I was shuffling, you saw me say oops and stuff fell. So two cards fell out. So I'm taking the two. So the first
All right.
one, the one that fell in this and totally like just stayed upright was
Ooh, the
the
Emperor.
Emperor.
That was for Franklin Delano Roosevelt, especially because he's sitting down. Ooh.
Ooh, there you go.
He was allegedly bound to a wheelchair, which probably, was
I'll let polio allegedly. But
polio.
guess what I pulled?
The Tower.
The star. The next
Ooh,
card.
yeah. Wow. I love that
Seven,
one.
17.
Two major arcanas. 21, 17 and 4. Blackjack. There we go.
Dude.
We win.
Dude. Cray cray.
The star is a good card because it comes right after the Tower, and the Tower is one of these cards we've talked about where it's kind of where your whole world gets thrown upside down, and the star is a really good card after it because you just look up to the heavens and you look up to how perfect everything is, and you see all the luminaries and the stars, and it just lets you feel okay. It lets you know, I mean, those things have been around forever, so allegedly we're probably going to be around forever, so there's really nothing to fear. It's all part of nature.
Yeah. And I'll just quickly read from the little book what the Emperor says. It says, you are establishing structures and foundations from which your success will grow. You favor stability uncertainty over flexibility and change. You have the discipline to see your plans through. And the reversed part says, step up, be accountable, get the work done. Be mindful of your relationship with power and authority. Allow this energy to flow through you, not against you.
Wow. That's a really synchronistic card because that's pretty much what we're going to be talking about this episode. So,
right?
Yeah.
Crazy.
That's
awesome.
a really good one. Well, the first thing we want to talk about really goes along with our quote, which is the mindset. And we think that's really a big part of it. Don't have the fear. Don't worry about just because everyone is running around in the streets, like as Michael Tessarian would say, like all these idiots running around, like with their pitchforks and all this stuff, I feel like that's always happened throughout our time, throughout mankind, throughout history. Maybe there was a golden age where it wasn't happening, but we don't know for sure. But as far as I can tell, everything we're ever told about history, it always seems like the mob was going crazy. I mean, you just look at South Park, right? Like South Park always shows how there's something going on and people freak out about it. And then the kids are just kind of there making fun of it and getting along and making it through just fine. So unless you're Kenny, because he's the one that always died in the beginning in every episode, they killed Kenny.
I've never really seen.
Yeah, I figured you probably haven't. They don't have it under a rock.
I'm lost.
You killed Kenny, you bastards. But yeah, I think that's what it has a lot to do with aligning yourself with truth and just having that inner knowing, that overstanding, as we like to say on the Sharon show, we overstand.
Ooh, I like that.
And we stand in our truth.
It's from that one girl that Carrie sent me a TikTok. She sends me some of her TikToks and she says overstand, which I think is cool. What y'all need to overstand is, you know what I'm saying?
Because you're not under anything. You're not, unless you're under a rock, but that's all right.
That's okay.
And a lot of this is mental, has to do with mental preparation. If you see that hard times are going to come, it's not, in my view, it's not a reason to get into despair and to get upset and to freak out and to get people around you all freaked out and stuff. It's more about taking things as they come day by day and figuring it out and just going along. And because if you're mentally there and you're mentally present, you could see the doors that open up for you, and you could see the opportunities that there are to actually grow and to move on and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Mental preparation is huge. And it's funny because it's also about like facing your fear along with that too, like we were just talking about. But I think mental preparation is required for facing your fear, because you can't just face your fear in your fear. You know what I mean? Because if you're afraid and you go into it afraid, it probably won't go as well. You kind of have to mentally prepare yourself to not be afraid so that you can face whatever it is you're going to go through. And one of the things that I recall as a teenager is an experience when I was in high school, and my sister had told me, if you graduate with, and she gave me some, whatever, like if you graduate with honors and blah, 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 or something like that, then I'll take you to Six Flags Magic Mountain, which is in California. And I knew that there were roller coasters there. I forgot to turn my do not disturb. Sorry. But I knew there were roller coasters there, and I was not fond of them. I was pretty deathly afraid, if one could say, of them. And when she told me that, I thought about it and I said, you know what? Any other kid my age would think this is great. They would think this is the greatest thing to be able to go on these roller coasters for a vacation, And I thought, why don't I like it? What am I afraid of? And I told myself, they're supposed to be fun. They should be fun. Like, why should I be afraid? Is there anything to be afraid of? And I did that. It's funny because I did that mental preparation. And then I thought to myself, no, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go and I'm going to have fun and I'm going to like it. And I did. I went and I freaking loved it. I got on like every roller coaster I possibly could, except for the ones that go like that. And don't say all of them do, but like the really traditional ones that, go up, 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 and then they just go straight down like that. Like I can't handle those still to this day. I don't know why. I haven't tried a roller coaster in eons though. So, but the one, like if they turned and then they like spiraled or they went upside down or they went backwards or they spun, I can handle all of that. I just can't handle going like straight down or like free fall. That to me was like, and maybe it's like from growing up in like a church setting where it's like you're falling into the pits of hell. Maybe like I associate falling into the pits of hell with free fall. So like to me, I would never want to do I would never want to go, what is it called? Skydiving. I have gone to the wind tunnel before and I've gone in the wind tunnel, but that's different. Like the wind is just blowing you. So you just lie there and, but I would not want to jump off a plane. No, thanks. But I'm not afraid of heights. I don't know where that's coming from. So that might be something to work on one of these days.
Yeah, it's like, why would you want to jump out of a perfectly functioning plane?
I concur.
Yeah. Well, how funny it would have been if you were so scared that you just failed everything, so then you didn't have to go. Like, you didn't get honors on purpose, so you didn't have to go to the amusement park.
Oh, I guess I didn't. I guess I didn't graduate with honors. I guess I'm not going to the amusement park.
That's we're not going to the amusement park.
Oh,
that's funny. Yeah, I used to have a fear of roller coasters and all that stuff. And I don't remember how old I was when we went to Six Flags around here one time, and it had been raining in the morning, and we almost didn't go because it was like a 3-hour drive. I went with my parents and stuff, and I took a friend or two, and we went anyway, and it cleared up. So the amusement park was just dead. Nobody was there. So we were just able to run around and go on the rides. And I think I just told myself, like, I'm just going to do it. Like, fuck it, let's just do it. And I did it and I loved it. And I'm like, all right. And then ever since, I haven't gone on a roller coaster in years. Maybe that's something we should do sometime. Maybe we should go to amusement park.
Ooh, that would be fun.
Yeah. So I just started doing it and I overcame it. But something more recently in my life was, well, I guess it's almost been 10 years now. In 2013, I got into stand-up comedy, and it's something I've always wanted to do my whole life. I think there's a video of me somewhere. I was probably like 6 or 7 and we're at the beach and my dad had like one of those handy cam things and I'm like telling jokes. I'm like standing up, like I had a microphone and I'm like telling jokes. And I've always watched stand-up comedy. And then finally, at like 36 or 5 or however old I was like, I'm going to do this. So I found an open mic near me. It was like actually a comedy class that I found that was going on near me. And I took that. And it's funny because a month before that, I was the best man in my friend's wedding and I had to give a speech, and I had already been DJing for a while. So I've like talked into microphones and stuff, but I never really would get up in front of people and talk. And I was like shaking, I was like nervous and I'm like trying to do this stuff. And it was really crazy. It didn't go exactly how I thought. It was still pretty good, but then a month later I do comedy. And the first time I was on stage, it was the same thing. I had like my notes and I had my head down and I'm just like telling my jokes into the thing. And they all said, because a couple other people were nervous too. And they just said, listen, you just keep doing it over. It's about repetition. And after a while, you just keep doing it, you get used to it. And a lot of people say that to me. They're like, I want to do comedy, but I'm too scared to get in front of people. And I was like, yeah, I was too. Like, it's not like you're just born to do it. Maybe some people are, but
some people.
It's possible, but a lot of the people that I saw, most people are really nervous. And then a couple months or years later, they look like they're naturals at it. So anything you really want to do in that regard, you have to overcome the fear and you have to do it, because I read stuff about that too, about comedy and books about it. And they would say that all that voice in your head that's telling you that's just your voice in your head. You have to overcome it. It's something inside that you have to overcome.
Right. And one thing I can talk about when it comes to speaking in public, um, is the experience I gained when I was at the place where I used to work. And sometimes I would have to teach, sometimes I would have to, because I taught a class called, I don't know if anybody knows this, but I studied linguistics as well. And I used to teach a class called American Accent Acquisition, where I taught foreign speakers of English how to approach an American accent. Because instead of approaching it in the negative way of saying, oh, you have an accent from such and such a place, you need to get rid of that. Because some people called the class accent reduction. And I was like, no, like, why not gain a new accent? Why can't you be like actors? And actors always, for new parts they play in new movies they come out, they have to learn a new accent sometimes. Maybe someone has to learn how to speak with a British accent, or someone has to learn how to speak with an Irish accent. So that's kind of was my approach. But anyway, that's a side note. I taught for a bit, and what I noticed, and I also had to give presentations and things like that as well. So what I learned from that is, if you know the material, that is number one. The best thing you can do is know your material, because that'll get rid of a lot of the like fear. Then the other thing is, okay, stepping up there in front of a lot of people, that's just practice. Just it just comes with practice. Over time you just get better at it, and you're comfortable and you're not weirded out by it. Now I had practice with that since growing up with singing in public, because I sang in church growing up since I was really, really young. So I didn't have so much a problem being in front of people singing if I had a song to sing. But if I had to speak, then it was different, because then I had to make sure I knew the material. And if I knew the material, then I was a lot more confident, a lot more comfortable. But yeah,
Yeah, and
definitely.
that goes right in what we're talking about here, because it really is all about fear and overcoming the fear. And when you wake up to whatever the heck this realm could be, once you realize that it's not what we were taught, and it's not what they tell you is in the TV and the movies, directly at least, they hint at it a lot. But once you find that out, then there's a lot of fear that can come in. And we found that it really is all about starting small. It's about, just like you said, practicing, really. So you try little things and you do what you can. And as you do certain things, you gain more confidence in it. And then you can overcome the fear and you could figure it out. And I think that fear is really the trap that a lot of us find ourselves in when it comes to this stuff. Because especially a lot of this truth stuff, if you look at a lot of these truther channels, like take Alex Jones, for example, he's been telling a lot of truth for a long time. But a lot of people will even say, if you take a look at it, if you step back and take a look at it, it's more about fear porn.
It's mixed with despair for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. It's always about they're coming to get you.
Yeah.
We're going to be locked in cages.
What
We're
are
going
you
to FEMA
going to
camps.
do?
Yeah, they're making the frogs gay. You're going to get stuck in fear camps. You're going to get stuck in FEMA camps, fear camps. And yeah, that could be true. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. The way this realm works, I don't think that's exactly how it works. But really, we found the key, though, is to just start small and just do what you can with the time that you have, instead of watching TV, instead of wasting your time in front of the screen. Other than the Oversharing show, definitely waste your time watching this, because it's not a waste of time. But a lot of people, even when they first get into truth, they'll just go down these rabbit holes where they'll look into videos and stuff, and they'll just consume all that media, and they just get scared. And it puts you, I think, in that vibration, in that mindset. And then you start to imagine all these possibilities that could happen. And it's just another trap that you get stuck in.
Yeah. And another thing that people get themselves stuck in is comparing themselves to other people. And I get it, I've heard it said, listening to different people on, like, hanging with bears sometimes, or people talking about what they're doing, and a lot of people are like, well, they're just crushing, and they've got lots of things lined up. Well, they're doing this and they're doing that and they're doing this and they're doing that, and it's like then it's like, oh, there's the check marks. Oh, it's like, what are you doing? Well, and then you just feel like overwhelmed because you feel like you're not doing anything and they're doing everything. And, then there's potentially some jealousy or whatever, but there doesn't need to be that, because you don't, again, you have to start somewhere, right? Those people started somewhere too. Where they're at, they had to start somewhere. So, and they started before you, and that's okay. I mean, we're all on this path, like up the mountain, like Brandon says, and we're all going to reach that mountain, but we're all going to probably reach it at different points in time, but we're all encountering different things on our journey as we do. So, maybe they started a garden before you, but maybe you already started something else before them that they never did. So just start small and not compare yourself to other people. You can be better at something than your previous self was. You can be better at something than you were a year ago. I'm definitely better at baking bread than I was a year ago or 2 years ago, because I wasn't making any bread 2 years ago. So yeah, it's really about not allowing that despair to come in and make you feel overwhelmed and make you feel like you're not doing enough and you're not crushing like everybody else.
Yeah, it goes back to fear. It's that little voice in your head that's saying, oh, look what they're doing and you're not doing it. But everybody has their own unique talents. Everybody has their own thing that they can do and that they can add to the community, and they can add to making themselves a better person or a quote unquote crusher. Like you said, I've heard it said like this: you should never compare yourself to anyone else. You should just compare yourself to yourself yesterday and the day before, because everybody has their own, like I said, unique talents. And that's what I feel is a good start. That's a good place to start when you want to change things. You just start with yourself and with your own unique talents. And it really is one step at a time. And like you said, the jealousy or the fear comes in, but all that stuff is just, I think it's like ego, because we get very comfortable to the way things are and we want somebody else to fix it if something has to be fixed a lot of times. But it really is up to us. And it's just about taking that first step. They say the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. So I think that's, and you brought up the beer community, and that's a really good one. Yes, you could get jealousy or fear by watching, but it's a good place to look at what everybody's doing, because everybody has their own unique talents and they started off small a lot of times. And sometimes it is good to just dive into something and maybe bite off more than you can chew. Some people, that's how they work, and then they figure it out as they go along. So really it's about everything. And what, it's about, like you said, one mountain top, there's different paths to the way up. So you got to figure out what works for you, but it's just about taking that first initial step and really starting small. And that's what I see in the beer community. People will start off with like growing some tomatoes one year, and then they start with some, next year they have more stuff, and then they maybe get some chickens or whatever it is. And that's really what I see. And it goes along just with aligning your behavior with nature, slowly but surely, one step at a time. You can only really start where you find yourself.
Absolutely. And the whole aligning with nature is huge. I think that's one of the key things to changing this world in which we live, is if we want to be that change, the key is to align yourself as best you can with nature, with natural law, the golden rule. It's all related.
Yeah.
The sky clock.
Yeah, totally.
As Crow says.
And, it's funny because a lot of times you'll see somebody that you think is crushing it and that is killing it. But in their mind, they have somebody else that they're looking at that they're trying to maybe compete with. And they're like, oh, I'm not as good as them. So this is something that hits you at all levels. But again, when you backtrack it, when you look at it, what is it really coming from? It's coming from fear that you're not good enough, or fear that what you're doing isn't good enough, or, I'll never be able to do that. Just like with comedy. That's why for years I didn't do it, because I just couldn't figure out, I'm like, what do I do? And then I just started going to open mics every night, or every night that I could, I would just do it and do it. And eventually I got a lot more comfortable with it. And now I could just get on stage and it's not a big deal at all to me. I don't really even get nervous. I just take a deep breath if I get a little nervous or whatever. But because the repetition of it is really what helps. It's like the failing, like it says in the Tao, what is more dangerous, success or failure? And if you fail, then you know what it's like to fail. And if you keep failing, then after a while, it's not even that bad. And that's how you learn the mistakes you make. Just like me with going on stage, say I have a joke I came up with, I might say it one way and it didn't work. And then I'd have to go back and figure it out and then change the words around and tweak it and go back up there and do it again. And then another time it would work. So, but if I never tried, I would just be that person in the audience that was wishing that they were up there, like I was for most of my life, So that, I think
Yeah.
that's a really big one.
Yeah. And we were talking about solutions and how we can do things a little bit better. And one of those things is accepting not only where you are, but where other people are too, because some people may come to you with despair. Some people may come to you with a sob story, and they may be feeling in a place where they can't handle what they're going through at the moment. Or maybe they don't. Maybe they don't come to you and tell you, but you know that they're going through something, by the way they respond, by the way they act, and things like that. So yeah, huge acceptance of yourself where you're at and other people, and
Yeah,
non-judgment.
totally. And to go along with the non-judgment thing, also an acceptance is a lot of times when you wake up to this truth, people around you don't see it. And I know my first instinct was immediately to try to tell everybody about it. And I wasn't accepting where their point of view was. I wasn't accepting their aperture. I was trying to woke rape them. I was like, can't you see, like, you're drinking tap water. What the hell is wrong with you? Don't you know about fluoride? And it's a neurotoxin, and the Nazis used to use it, and all these crazy things that I found out, whatever. So, it's like, you just think that you could change the world once you see it. Because I feel like, for me anyway, when I saw it, I was like, oh, it's so simple. Oh, it's right there, right in front of my face. And then how come people can't see it? So I think this is another thing that goes along with waking up, or seeing what's going on, is to try to fit in to the people around you, or to society. And I'm not saying that you have to like go around and fit into society, but this is something that we found that helps. And we have a quote here from Ram Dass. It's kind of a long quote, and I'm going to explain it as I go along, but he talks about acceptance and non-judgment. And it says, because there is such a desire in somebody that is on the path of Dharma to have that other person die your death. And what he means here is, it's like we talked about that concept of death, your former way of seeing the world is done, and now you could see it. So now you want other people to go through that exact process that you do, right? And he goes on to say, die the death you think they should die, for them to be liberated. And me, I've learned over the years, first is it doesn't work, because when you push against somebody, even the subtlest model in your head, they should be different than they are, awakens in them at a very unconscious level, pushing back. And I've noticed in my human relationships that as I want less and less from each individual, there's much less paranoia in them at a deep level, and they are much more available immediately. And the interesting thing is, what does it mean to be a safe space for another human being? A safe space means you don't have an agenda, but we have this tendency to have a model because we're trying to justify the way we're living our lives. So tell me that word balance is really a key issue. Oh,
So to
sorry.
me, yeah.
So to me, that word balance is really a key issue. And what I feel like he's saying here is so true, because if you see somebody else isn't living right or isn't doing something right, if you go up to them and you want to push up against it, they just have this automatic response. It's like a, what do you call it?
Instinct.
Yeah, it's like an instinct, but it's also like I'll think of the word, but they automatically can sense that you don't accept them. So their defenses come up right away. But we found that if you accept people for who they are, and I found this by talking to people, by just listening to them, instead of trying to go against what going against what they say, or instead of trying to show them my way or what I found, that if I just listen and accept it, it's for them, it's kind of like something they never encountered before, right? It's kind of like if you come up to like a Dallas Cowboy fan and you're like, oh, you like the Cowboys? I'm a Giants fan. How can you like the Cowboys? And then it just immediately instills this sense of division, just like we talked about in episode 11 and 11:11. We talk about all this division, and it just gets their defenses up right away.
Yeah.
So I feel like, defense mechanism. That's what I was going to say. So
Okay.
it triggers a defense mechanism in them, because they could feel that that you don't accept them, just even by body language, and sometimes even the little things you say or micro expressions. So what I do is I try to just be in the moment, listen to what they're saying. And it's not like it's, easy to do. Trust me. I still find myself like, oh, you don't know about the moon landing? Like, you still think we took that meth hedge tree fort to the moon, but I'll just kind of be there as, like Ram Dass says, like a safe space, and not one of these like, oh, it's a safe space, you can't say words or whatever, you can't, you gotta watch people's feelings. Not like that, but just as a mode of acceptance, as a person who's accepting them, because that's so rare in the society. Everybody has their own opinion, and they're not really shy to tell you about it, so I think that alone is the foot that you can get in the door with them, and they'll be like, wow, this person, even if they don't realize it consciously, in a subconscious level, they're just going to feel more love from you, I guess, than judgment. So I think that really goes a long way.
Well, because love is non-judgment. True unconditional love is non-judgment. It's truly accepting someone for who they are, where they are.
Yeah, exactly. Where they are in life. And in the ways that I do this, and we've talked about this before, is really with empathy. And you can kind of look at where they are and what they went through and why they might have the point of view that they do. And it's okay for them to have that point of view. And the reason I say it's okay is it is the point of view that they have. So the faster you can accept it, it's going to be better for that relationship overall.
Yeah. And the other thing is to not respond to their spiraling or their despair. Because if you simply just let them speak, let them vent, you don't feel that fire. I've done it before myself on accident, where I say something that just keeps fueling the fire, and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have said anything at all. Yeah.
Yeah, people don't want to think that they're wrong. They spend their whole life with a certain point of view, or they might have come across something and they have this point of view. So when you say it to them, it's just like I've talked about this before, when I stopped eating wheat or bread, really. And I would just tell people like, oh, well, how do you eat? And then, or like, say you're a vegan or whatever it is, you're a vegetarian, or, you tell people, and then all of a sudden they take it as an affront, as an assault on them. And you're not even, at that point, you're not even trying to tell them what they're doing is wrong, but it's just because people have this defense mechanism inside them, and they just want everybody's worldview to line up with theirs. And I'm not saying that you should lie to people and stuff, but this is why we say you just don't say anything. Sometimes it's okay to just remain quiet about it and not talk about it, because the silence, like they say, silence is golden. And sometimes people can hear themselves when you give them the space to hear it. So they don't have to hear you, but they could say it, and then it'll make more sense to them. You know what I'm saying? And it's not like you're going along saying, yeah, whatever, but you're just being like, again, you're being that safe space for them. It's something that they're just not used to encountering. So I think once you do that, you could build a little rapport with them, and then you can use your own example. That's what we talk about, like being that example. What do you do? And then you wait for them to ask you about it. And then once they start to ask you, it's different, because now you're in a whole different setup with them. It's not like it's not an adversarial thing anymore, right? You're not fighting them. You're kind of just letting them know a little bit about what you do. And I know you wanted to say something about silence and
Yeah, no,
acquiescence.
it's okay. I was actually going to reply to something you said about letting them speak, because sometimes just letting someone speak, or let's just say someone letting me speak, let's say, and let's say I'm spiraling, okay? And they're not responding, right? They're just letting me vent, they're letting me talk, they're letting me speak. I can kind of see how maybe I'm being a little bit ridiculous, you know, and maybe I can say, okay, maybe I'm spiraling here. Maybe I'm being ridiculous. Maybe I should calm down. I shouldn't be worrying about this situation as much as I'm acting like I'm being worried about it. So in that way, not only are you giving them space to maybe get their point across and maybe feel more comfortable with you, but you're also giving them space to see if maybe what they're spiraling about is truly something worth spiraling about or not. And is really anything worth spiraling about? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe nothing's worth spiraling about.
And maybe, you could just let them tire themselves out. You know what I'm saying? Like a kid sometimes when they have a
Right.
tantrum or freak out,
Right. Right. That too. Very valid point.
because a lot of times also people are looking for attention, and
Yes.
certainly people are looking for validation.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not exactly giving them the validation, but you're not pushing against it either. You're just being there in the moment with them. And it's really something that people, like I said, aren't used to. And I've had some pretty good results with it, with
Me
dealing with
too.
people. You
Me
just kind of let
too.
them do what they got to do. And you're like, all right. And that, like you said, then sometimes I'll do it too. And then I'll be like, oh man, I sound like an idiot right now, and then they self-correct, and then they see that
Right.
you're accepting them. So they're like, oh, what's going on? So that's when they might open a dialogue with you. Well, like, what do you think? What do you do? And when people, another
Right.
thing is when people start to ask me questions, the thing I've learned, and I do this on the show, is I try not to make claims, because when you tell them, say, listen, I don't know, but this is what I've seen, or this is what I found, or maybe could it be this? And when you're asking questions instead of making direct statements to them, there's really nothing for them to hold on to fight against. It just
Right.
becomes a true conversation at that point.
Yeah, I love that, asking questions, because it also helps them identify the root situation, the root, could it be problem? And you're not making any claims. You're just asking a question. It makes them think, well, why am I upset about this? Or why did I let that bother me? Or why do I continually let this thing spiral me out of control? So that's a good point. But what I was going to say in response to like the silence part, it's not like we're in a courtroom like Tom Barnett talks about and all those other lawful legal guys talk about, that if you're silent, then you're in agreement. It's we're talking people to people here, living men and women to living men and women. So the silence is more like you're just listening, you're allowing them to speak, and you're allowing them to let out their fears, let out their despair, let out their pain, for healing purposes, I think.
Yeah, it really is healing. And it's funny that we wanted to talk about that, because now it makes more sense, because even in the legal realm, when you respond and you want to stay in honor, you really are just asking questions back. If somebody makes a statement at you, you're like, oh, okay, well, do I need to show you my license, officer? Is there a law where I actually have to show you? You're like,
Do
dude,
you have any evidence for that?
yeah, exactly. So it's the same kind of thing. You're just kind of responding, but without making any claims. And I wanted to bring up an example of my own life, because I've talked about before how I had severe intimacy issues, and I wrote a book about it and all that stuff, and how, I guess I was considered what people would call a sex addict. And I had a friend of mine who, right before I had my epiphany, I was friends with her and we were talking about this stuff. And she's like, you're a sex addict, basically. She was telling me that. And I was like, that's fake, because I used to think that that was just an excuse that people would use when they got caught. They're like, I'm a sex addict. What can I do? I didn't ever.
So you weren't like claiming that excuse.
Yeah. I was like, no, that's all bullshit. Like, this is just the way it is. Men and women aren't monogamous by nature. We're just supposed to, this is how we evolved. We just banged everything. And so she tried telling me this bit of truth and I wasn't ready for it yet. But then after I had my epiphany, I called her and I told her about it. I was like, oh my God, you were so right. Like, I was wrong. But from my point of view, where I came my whole life, all the information that I went through, all this stuff that I looked at, I was actually right. So that's why I had that cognitive dissonance about it, because I could see where I had all this evidence to support my claim, I guess you could say, right? But the evidence wasn't good. It was just it was truths, like half truths and stuff like that. But couldn't see it at the time. So the reason I wanted to bring that up was, if anybody tried to just directly say that to me, I would just go into super fight mode about it. And I had all my arguments and everything set up. So I just wasn't ready. And that's how I kind of I have to look at other people. I have to look at where I was at that point and say, maybe they're in a similar situation. So it's not going to make sense for me to just start trying to woke rape them at this point and trying to wake them up, because they're just not ready for it.
Right. Exactly.
And since we're talking about solutions, we wanted to talk about self-work, because we were talking about earlier about being an example for people. And a lot of that is doing self-work and working on yourself, because as you do this and as you heal yourself, you become a light to other people. You become a beacon to other people. And
which is what Brandon means, right?
Yeah.
You told me that once.
Beacon light. Yeah. I learned that in a Christian bookstore when I was about, I don't know, 4th grade. I saw a bookmark and it said Brandon and it said light beacon. And I'm like, wow. And I'm already really tall anyway. So I'm like, that's perfect.
You're a lighthouse.
Yeah, I am a lighthouse. And you could see me for miles and miles, because I've never seen the curve. So the first thing we wanted to do here when we're talking about ego is bring up some memes, because I think that comedy is definitely a good way to share this stuff and to highlight different things. So let's see. Here we go. Am I showing the notes? Oh, no. Okay.
No.
Notes are in front. There we go. All right. So this is the one that I sent to Sharon a while back. And she was like, at first she didn't get it. And I had to kind of explain it to her. But this is something that happens to people a lot in the new age also, but it can happen to anybody when you wake up to something and you're like, you know what? I want to get rid of this ego. And you jump off the diving board. Yay. And boop, you jump right. You get splat right into the spiritual ego. And what this is really about is that once you, like, so you wake up to a lot of this information and you feel like you start to feel like you're better than other people because you are spiritual, and you develop this other spiritual ego, right? So that's one we wanted to show you. And then another funny one here is, there we go. Oh, my menu's in the way of my tabs. Here we go. Here's another really good one. Real gold, it shows it, and then fool's gold, and then comedy gold. I've already done my inner work.
I'm done. Yeah, I've arrived. Okay.
Like, oops, I didn't sign in. All right. So this is one that I think we encounter too, and that happens to people because they feel like once they wake up and they do a little bit of whatever is called shadow work. And this also happens in the New Age movement too, where people can get trapped in this idea that they already know it. Like Sharon just said, I've already done my work. I don't need to do anymore. What are you guys talking about? I know what's going on here. So these are just, what's this? My high ass salt weed nuggets. That's hilarious. People are funny. So yeah, weed nuggets. How dare you? But we wanted to talk about ego, and these memes definitely highlight it really well.
Yeah. And one thing is funny that I just thought of right now. I used to say this like a few years ago, especially when I was in those circles with Christians who were looking into Torah observance and Torah observant people, like whatever. I was and going to the church I was going to and everything. I was saying this, and I don't remember who I would say it to, maybe just to myself, but maybe to other people. But I would say, we're all on a journey and no one has arrived. In a way to say to people, stop judging other people where they're at, And because people would be like, well, such and such and so, and that's not how you say this. And that's not how you pronounce the name of Jehovah, of God, of Yahuwah, of Yah, of whatever. And it was just like, okay, that's your opinion. We're all on a journey and no one has arrived. Like, you can't sit there and think that you're better just because you've come to some conclusion that you think is the correct conclusion. So I don't know. It just made me think of that. We're all on a journey and no one has arrived.
Yeah, exactly. It's another way for people to take their personal responsibility and put it out there. They say, I'm doing it the right way. I'm fine. Everything you're doing is wrong. You're screwed up. You're messed up. And Ram Dass talks about this. He says every method is a trap, which I love. And
I love it.
It's so true, because I was just listening to some of it last night, and he's like, you want to get rid of desires, but what desire do you use to get rid of those desires? So you have this desire to get rid of your desires, and then after a while you got to throw that desire away also, but it's fine though, because we're basically clawing ourselves out of the mud. Like Sharon and I aren't trying to say that we know everything.
Yeah, I'm including myself, and we're all on the journey and no one has arrived. I haven't arrived either. So
yeah, we're not these beings. I mean, we talked in other episodes about all the stuff that somebody in the society is subjected to, from the indoctrinal education and the religion and government and all this stuff. And they're just like these things that we have to take off and let them go after a while. And David R. Hawkins talked about this, Dr. David Hawkins.
And shout out to Joe, who introduced us to David.
Yeah, thanks, Joe P. You're the man. And those conversations are great that we have. So he talked about how some people can reach this certain level of enlightenment, and a few things happen. Like people do things like astral project, or they get wrapped up in magic or conjuring, or these things. And a lot of these things are called siddhis, SIDIS. It's something, I think it's a Indian term or whatever.
I'd never heard of it until you said it.
There are these powers, and some people even do powers like Ram Dass is talking about his guru Maharaji, and these things that he could do. Like if Ram Dass went somewhere and, like, say he spoke and he did all this stuff, he'd go back and talk to Maharaji about it, and he'd be telling them, and then Maharaji would be like finishing the story, like he knew what was going on. So these things but sometimes people get these powers, and the ego kicks in again, because a lot of times when you get these powers, you get a whole new set of people that come around you, and they look up to you and they start to worship you, and then it could go to your head. And then once that stuff starts happening, David R. Hawkins would talk about it a lot. He would say that at that point, a lot of these powers go away, and then people have to fake it. And then they have to just get in that ego, and they identify as this person who has these powers, who's enlightened, that could do all this stuff. And that again is another trap, right? So, and it's just like people that meditate and they can reach higher forms of consciousness, without psychedelics, and they start to see how terrible everyone else is. Excuse me. Or maybe they just start helping all these people, and again, it just starts going to their head, so they get stuck at that level. And again, there's nothing wrong with this. We're just trying to point it out. And that's why we use these memes and comedy to highlight it, because I feel like there's temptations at every level. Once people, like you said, they think that they've arrived and now they got it, and now they're become a guru, and they start their own church, and they got all this stuff going, and now they're charging. Again, though, we feel like this is all just a journey. It's not a destination. Every day there's going to be temptations. And I think sometimes it gets easier, but when you get to these high levels, it's got to be very tempting to use these. And it's funny because Ram Dass would say that too. He's like, you start to get all these powers, but then to really ascend to the next level, you don't even use the power. Sometimes he would say these siddhis are used, though, to kind of like wake people up out of their sleep. If somebody's really asking and they're really wanting to know, like, you show them something, some kind of crazy power, and then they're like, oh shit, this is real, but you don't get attached to it. You don't get attached to the person who has the powers, because at the end of the day, it's really not you that has the powers. It's all of us. It's this realm. It's the way that it works.
Yeah. And some things that you were saying made me think of a couple of things. Some time ago, you and I had watched I think I sent you a video about a guy, and I'd seen it some years prior, maybe, but I'd forgotten about it and watched it again recently when I shared it with you, about that guy who allowed himself to be filmed while he was doing things that were like, crazy, ridiculously impossible things, right? Like a pile of newspaper, and then he would put his hands over it like this, and then he would make it start on fire with his energy, because we're energy beings, and we can do those sorts of things. But the thing that he didn't want to do was to show off, because once you start showing off, then it becomes, again, like you were saying, like you begin to think you know it all. You're like, oh, you're there, you arrived, right? So there's that temptation, right? So that's why he had never allowed himself to be recorded doing these things. But the guy kept bugging him and asking him. So he finally said, okay, fine, you can record me. And at one point, he got a splinter in his hand from a table where he had a nail just with his, I guess, with his body. He projected that thing to go, or pencil or something, to go through the table. And then he got a splinter in his hand, and then also a splinter in someone's eye. And he was very, very upset about that, because his own ego and his own, trying to show off, got someone hurt. And also it manifested on him too. He got hurt as well. So after that, he was like, no, you can't film me anymore. I can't do this. I can't do this anymore, because, Spirit's telling me not to do this. Spirit told me not to allow this to happen. And I allowed it. And here I am with the consequences. So, but yeah, I forgot that guy's name. I'll have to go look him up, but that was a really good video. And if I find it, we'll share it in the description
that's
box.
exactly what I thought of too when I was talking. Glad that you brought that up.
Right.
And it's just like a lot of people are familiar with, I'm sure that watch this show are familiar with Christian ideals. And I remember when I was in the born again Christian thing, if somebody left it, they would say, if somebody got out of the born again Christian thing, they would say that they backslid, or, they're backsliding.
Yeah.
And it's that same kind of thing. So I feel like at any level, you have to kind of be careful about that stuff. It reminds me a lot of Lord of the Rings. I'm going to bring it up again. When the whole company was trying to scale Caradras, and they're trying to go over the mountain, and all the snow's coming and everything's going, and they're trying to get this fire started, because at one certain point they're like, screw it, we got to start a fire, or these hobbits are going to freeze to death, and they can't get a fire going. So finally Gandalf's like, all right, he's like, I'm going to start a fire. He goes, but now everyone is going to know that Gandalf the Grey is here if I start this fire. So a lot of times when you reach these higher levels, you do attract these negative entities, whatever they can be. And it could be the temptation or whatever it is, demons or whatever. They see that power and then they come at you. So it also makes you also make yourself a target at a certain level with that stuff. So that's why it's really an internal thing. And but again, sometimes, just like we say, the world's perfect. Sometimes you do have to learn that lesson. So you're gonna display this power, and something might happen, but then you could just use it. The key is to not get down on yourself and to not get mad about it, but to just use it as an example and move on.
Yeah. And just to bring up an example, or of, just something that I can overshare for the moment because it came up, but I'll just overshare on something that happened yesterday. I went to an event that was kind of teaching people how to develop their mediumship skills. And if they ever felt that they were able to channel people from the other side and things like that. So, and, she was talking about how, like, okay, you might see things, you might see like figures appear, you might see a face, you might see all these sorts of things. And I just thought to myself, I mean, I wasn't opposed to seeing something if it appeared, but I just thought to myself, I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen ghosts. I've never seen entities, or, seen demon possess. I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen demon possessed people, like alleged demon possessed people. And I've never felt that, like like people say, oh, do you feel the spirit, or do you feel like there's a spirit here or something like that? No, I never did. Right. Even at church, when they were like, don't you feel the Holy Spirit? I'm like, no, I don't feel anything at all. but I say that just as a joke because
Such a buzzkill, Sharon.
I know, but
No, I know.
I don't like if somebody feels it, that's great. Like you can, but I'm just telling you I can't. I'm not saying, just like you said, when you're like, I don't eat bread, guys, it doesn't mean I'm telling you not to eat bread. It just means I don't eat it. And that's just me. Like I don't see the entities. If you see them, great. I'm not saying that you can't, but I'm just telling you, I don't see what you're seeing.
Yeah, and why do you need my validation anyway if you see these spirits, like, right?
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, but I think to myself, if I'm not being allowed to see them to keep me humble, you know what I mean? Because like, what if I did see them? Then I'd be like, well, I see them and I'm here to tell you.
Yeah, and that
So
ego
maybe
kicks
that's why I
in.
don't see them.
Yeah, and everybody has their own gifts and stuff. So,
Yeah. And I'm not saying I'll never see them. I don't know. Because I was open to seeing anything. I mean, I wasn't afraid or anything like that.
and I just have to add one thing. You probably have seen a lot of people that are demon possessed. You just don't realize it. All
And
these
I don't
people
realize it.
with their experimental medical serums and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah. Anyway, moving right
But
along.
yeah. But as something else that you were talking about made me think of a couple of scriptures that I wanted to read. So the whole concept of people like getting to the point where they think they've arrived, right? Oh, well, I can do this and I can do that. And so, blah, blah, blah. Well, I have a couple of scriptures for you. I'm just kidding. So it reminded me of what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 13, which is the scripture, the famous chapter that everybody talks about, love. And some people even read this at like weddings and stuff. But it says, if I speak in tongues of men and angels, but have not love, I am only a ringing gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have absolute faith as to move mountains, but I have not love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and exult in the surrender of my body, but I have not love, I gain nothing. And that is verses 1-3. And then, of course, it goes through the ones that everybody knows. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, da, 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 da. But yeah, so it reminded me what? It
And all
reminded
that
me of
crap.
that.
No, I'm just kidding. No.
And all that lovely
And
crap.
all
No,
that jazz.
and all that lovely, it is a beautiful set of verses. But yeah, it's like you can claim you do all kind of stuff, but if you don't practice the golden rule, which basically is love, non-judgment, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have done unto you, then you don't have anything. You're
Yeah.
not getting somewhere. You're just lying to yourself.
You're basically displaying. Could it be that you're displaying these powers to just get attention or to just get fame or whatever it is, Yeah. And we see that a
Right.
lot with quote unquote dark occultists and stuff like that. I feel like that's what they're doing. They're trying to mystify you to rope you in.
Right. Right.
And I would hear that too, like in the born again Christian thing, they would say it's like the verse or the part in the Bible where Jesus said, that one lady came up to him and gave him like 2 pennies or whatever, and everyone else is giving all their money. And he's like, yeah, but that lady only had 2 pennies. You know what I mean? She
Yeah.
gave me everything, and it was out of love that she gave it. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it just reminds me of something that I started to come across even as I was a Christian, looking into more depth, more scripture, more wisdom, more understanding, or more comprehension is a better word, of what the scriptures really are talking about. And it was just like boiling down to me: love God, love people. because the scripture in Matthew, and it's also, I think, in a couple other places, but in Matthew 22, starting at I'll start with at verse 34. And when the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, they themselves gathered together. And one of them, an expert in the law, tested him with a question. Teacher, which commandment is the greatest in the law? And Jesus declared, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All of the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. So love God, love people. It boils down to the simplest thing. And to me, that is the whole of like natural law. That is the whole of the golden rule.
Yeah. And the most important part there, where I think a lot of people miss, is love your neighbor as yourself, which means you have to love yourself first. And that's what self-work is all about, going inside, exactly. Looking at yourself at different aspects and getting to actually love yourself, because most people hate themselves. And if they hate themselves, then how can they really love anyone else? You know? Right.
And some people, I wasn't going to bring this up, but some people don't realize that they hate themselves. That's the problem. But it becomes evident when you see behaviors where there's a lot of things like attachments and things like that. When there's just like we were talking about in the episode about narcissism, where you're looking for excuses to get into arguments with people, because that's something that narcissists do. So it's escapism. So if there's some reason that you're trying to escape something and you realize that you're running away from something, or you're too attached to something and you feel like you can't live without it, or you're going to die without it, that's a signal. That's pointing to some healing work that you need to do on the inside.
Yeah. And when we say attached to things, we don't just mean physical things, material, also ideas and ways of seeing the world and all these things. You know, some people get really
animals, anything.
Yeah. People get really attached to, a good example would be like the mud flood. This is something that's coming up a lot lately.
Oh,
and I
right.
Shout out to Berserker Bear. Bushwhacking in Buffalo. Check out his channel on YouTube, because he was bringing up how, a lot of people think there was this mud flood that happened and it was a realm wide event that happened and it was a reset. And he was bringing up all this information where he's like, well, it looks like it could have been like a localized thing, like it happened here and then maybe it happened here, so maybe we should look into it. And then people were giving him some crap about it, and it wasn't evidence-based. It was just because they were attached to this idea. And with that whole thing with self-love, I feel people get attached to these ideas because they have all these other people that validate it. And when they kind of virtue signal, right, their virtue signal, like, oh yeah, I believe in the mud flood, and you don't. They want that other person's validation. They want that other person's love for them, because they want to feel like they're good enough. And I think that the first step really of self-love is to love yourself. Then it doesn't matter what other people think, because you already know that you're validated. The validation comes from within. So you don't need to seek it in an exterior place, So yeah.
Absolutely. Fantastic points. Something that we wanted to talk about, but we forgot to put in the notes. So
yeah, exactly. But it came up organically anyway, right?
Yeah, it sure did. Yeah, love it. But yeah, so some of the things that you can start to do to help yourself come along with things like meditation and contemplation.
Yeah,
and
for
Brandon
sure. Meditation helped me a lot. And again, just like Ram Dass says, every method is a trap. I feel like when you're coming at it from the new age thing and you're just trying to block your mind of everything and you're trying to get all the thoughts out, it could be a good thing. But sometimes people just meditate, and then it's all they do. And then they become kind of like an empty shell. And then they're really open to suggestion with other things. And when we talk about meditation, It's more about, yeah, it's quieting the mind and it's quieting the ego and the thinking part of the mind. And then you start to see, you start to identify with the observer. You know, you realize that it's not just you, there's this observer that's back there seeing everything. And then people can identify with that. But then there's the next level where you let go of the observer also. And letting go meditations are really good. Contemplation is a really good one where you take an idea, or maybe you take a scripture, like the prayer of St. Francis is a really good one. I used to meditate on that, and you just kind of repeat it over and over to yourself, and you just start to break it all down and what it means. And then after a while, you can quiet that thinking mind and the ego, and you can learn to disassociate from it and realize that's not who you are. You aren't this person who, you know, I like to play golf, and I like steak, and I like all these things. It's like there's more to that, and you could start to back off and let that go. And another good one, when I even talk about this in my book with shadow work, is you just go in a quiet room, and all this stuff that comes up that you usually try to get away from by watching TV, or even listening to podcasts or whatever it is that you do, you just sit in a quiet room, and things that come up and they start to bother you, just ask yourself, well, why is it bothering you? What is wrong with this aspect of the world? You know, like the Tao says, you want to change the world? I don't think it could be done. The world is perfect, you know, something like that. If you tamper with it, you'll ruin it. So if you find an aspect of the world that you don't think is perfect, a good exercise in contemplation would to be like, well, then what is it about that that's going on that I don't like? Is it something in my life? Is it something within me? Is it an idea I have? Is it an attachment? And these are all good ways to point to attachments that you have when you stop pointing the finger out, because they say when you point one finger, there's four pointing back or whatever, you know. You could start to look at these attachments that you have, and then you could delve into those. And again, there's no one way to do this. Everyone has to do it their own way, but this is just a good way to start.
Yeah, and you
Go ahead.
mentioned also meditations that are pre-recorded on YouTube, things like that. There's a lot of letting go meditations out there.
Yeah, I would look into David R. Hawkins' letting go meditations. And a lot of that is you just breathe and you feel the tension in your body. And you start to breathe into it and you accept it. And then as the emotions come up, whatever they are, instead of trying to push them away, instead of trying to judge them, instead of saying, I shouldn't be judging, or I shouldn't be upset, I shouldn't be mad, you sit with it. You let it be. You actually, after a while, you could welcome it in, and you could say, here, you want some tea? Whatever it is, there's different methods to do it. And as you sit with this, you can learn to just let it go. And
Yeah, it
that's been helping
reminds
me a lot. Go
that's
ahead.
awesome. It reminds me of the Sedona method that you had sent me some time ago. I don't remember the guy's name, but I think he also does that concept of, checking in to see if the pain is still there, or if the feeling is still there, and just letting it sit there, acknowledging it, and then coming back and asking, is it still there?
Yeah. Could I let this
Okay, could I
go?
let it go? Yeah.
Would I let it go? And when? you know,
Yeah.
that's another really good exercise too to do. And again, sometimes these things don't resonate with you, but that's fine. There's other methods of doing it, but this is a really simple and easy way where you don't have to go find some guru and pay them hundreds of dollars to do this
Yeah.
stuff. It's just stuff that you could figure it out on your own, but I think that's a really big one. Also, being in the present moment is a good one. Try to this is really, when I first got into meditation and everything, this is one thing I would do all the time. I would try to just be in the present moment. Like I remember there was a time where I was out with all my friends when I was getting into this, and we're on my friend's boat, and we're like, going through the water, heading to this spot or whatever. And I just kept saying to myself, just be here, like, don't worry about what's going on tomorrow, all these obligations, or, you have to DJ a wedding. Is everything all right? It's like, no, while you're here, there's nothing else you could do about that. Just be here in this moment and enjoy it. The sun's out. It's beautiful. The water's great. Just try to keep bringing yourself back to the present moment. And that's another really good exercise that could be considered a meditation. But this is something you can even do when you're not sitting under a tree or, comfortably somewhere. When you're actually out in the world, you could just stay conscious of what's going on right now. And then if you start to see something that you don't like, then you could say to yourself, well, why don't I like that? If this person is saying something that's bothering me, well, why is it bothering me? If they're not like outrightly attacking you or anything, what's going on? Why do I have a problem with the way this person sees the world? It's just because of all the experiences they went through.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were talking about how Michael Tessarion talks about shadow work. Maybe you can
Yeah.
explain a little bit about that.
Michael Tessarion talks about the way he talks about it is he says that the shadow could be looked at as the body, because a lot of times when we repress these emotions and we stuff them down and we don't want to deal with them, they go into the body and they start to cause areas of tightness, and they could cause disease and sickness and illness. And he says that the real shadow work is done in the body, and you can activate your body. And he mentions things like Tai Chi, certain types of yoga that you can do, but it's like a one-on-one thing. It's not like going to a yoga class with other people. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I'm just talking about it's something you're doing for yourself. And he even said, go out into nature and you walk around and you talk to yourself, or you could talk to a tree, or you talk to animals, and you kind of just let things out of your body that way. And you just give yourself that space.
Yeah, and that reminds me of sound healing, because I recently went to Prescott with, I say Prescott on here, but I was saying Prescott for a little
Prescott.
while. Prescott. With my friend Stephanie, and she was doing some sound healing sessions for this event that she was attending at this hotel. And I went to like almost all of her sessions, and I was listening to the way she was describing and introducing the topic to people who were new to it. And essentially, what was very interesting to me was that she said she had looked into, prior to doing sound healing things, she had looked into things like the whole talking about things. And that's how letting it go by talking about things. It's like these psychiatry and whatever. I don't know the proper terminology, but she had looked into those types of things, and she noticed it wasn't helping people. So somehow she got to the point where she was looking into sound healing. Well, now she uses things like gongs, singing bowls, tuning forks, ocean drums. She just has a plethora of amazing instruments, and she uses them for healing for people, because she said that they resonate at certain frequencies. And as you're lying there in a position of, you're basically lying on your back like you're going to go to sleep, and she puts you in a state, because it's like a binaural sound, right? Coming from all the instruments and stuff. And it puts you in a state, I think she said theta state, so that you're able to get to a point where you're in between that phase of like, you're not quite asleep, but you're not quite awake either. But for whatever reason, these sounds can do the actual healing, or can result in healing of the body, of all those wounds, those that you can try to talk about them all day long, or maybe you don't even know how to talk about them because you don't remember what happened, because they're just stuck there from childhood and the memories aren't there, or they're stuck. But these sound healings release all that out without you having to even talk about them. And so people, she works with people who are addicts, or former addicts, or people who are attempting to let go of some of these habits, right? And because she works with a program that helps people come out of those habits, and I don't remember the names of the programs, but it was very interesting because she's had people like their tendency toward addiction to something like can pretty much go away because of these sound healings that she's done with people. So it really, really is amazing. So for Michael Desarion to say the body is the shadow, that makes total sense right there. Just in that, just knowing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we hold a lot of emotions, and I really believe that's where disease comes from. A lot of it is because of that. And as you start to let go, just it's very, very healing. So there, like we said, there's many methods, many different ways. Everybody has their own way that resonates with them. So we're just kind of highlighting a few.
Right. Absolutely. Um, but yeah, so just I guess in closing, we want to talk about kind of what each of us is doing. And you know, I'm not I'm not one of those bears who's out there doing the gardening and stuff like that, which is fine. Um, but the things that I'm doing, I resonate with right now and are working for me. And I know that in the future, whatever I'm meant to do, I will do. So, but for now, one of the things I'm having fun with is sourdough bread. And I make it now, it's about once a week. And I'm tweaking it. It's like over the last year and several months, I've been tweaking it little by little to just modify it, change it up. I went through adding rye, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I'm at the point now where I'm milling my own grains. And my most recent one, I added kefir. So it was even more sour, which I love because I love sourdough. So maybe my next tweak might be how to make it like a honey wheat bread, maybe. So that'll be fun. I'll just do some recipe modifications and tweak it and see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, I'm doing a lot of other things too. Like I do mostly every day I do a walk or a bike ride. I do some yoga, some meditation. In the evenings, I do sun gazing and grounding in the park. And let's see, Brandon wanted to talk about water. He's looking into getting a water machine. I have right now, I have the Brown's gas machine, and I have this like Berkey wannabe thing. It's not a real Berkey, but hey, it works. At least it should work. It does work. And I have an RO filtration system. So it's just, I'm doing what I can with what I have right now. And the other thing, this show is like, I love it. I love doing this thing. And so shout out to Brandon for giving me the oomph to do the show.
Pushing you off the diving board.
Yeah, pretty much. Not quite pushing,
Oh, I know.
We did a one episode, and that was like not part of this show. And then I was like, well, I guess that wasn't that bad. So
yeah, it's like we talked about at the beginning of the episode. You just try it and you try it and you try it. And then eventually you get some people that follow the show and start to send great comments and hang out in the chat. Shout out to the chat, by the way. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us in the chat.
Fun stuff. Always fun.
Yeah, I think that's a really important step, is because we were talking about not wanting to woke rape people. So what's really helped me is stuff like this. And I'm going to talk about it a little more later, but stuff like this is because it's like the trivium method. Grammar is out there. It's like the information that you find, the facts, and then you run it through your logical process. And the next step is rhetoric. And you want to tell people. And I feel like a lot of times when you keep this stuff in, it could also be damaging to you when you keep this information in. So if you find a healthy way to express it, it is really healing. And then at the end of the day, you're helping other people, really. And what I always say is, I'm a lot less likely to argue with somebody about something now. I'm just like, go watch my show. Oh yeah, go watch episode 11. I talk all about this. Here you go. Check it out. And if you want, comment on it and we'll talk about it. You know what I mean? We don't even have to have an argument about it.
Right. Very good point. Yeah. What was I going to say about that? I forgot. But yeah, fun stuff. I really like. Oh, well, what I was going to say is that I thought that maybe like my blog would be my outlet, but then I would find myself taking too much time to write it all out. And then, when was I going to publish it? And it became really simple to just record something with Brandon. And that became my blog.
Yeah.
My vlog.
And you found that out by trial and error. I started with blogging also, and a lot of people have great blogs, and that's good for them. It's a really good form of expression. But then some people want to take it to a different angle, and they want to get on they want to turn on the camera and talk about it into a microphone. So
yeah, absolutely. But I guess just where I'm at now is, again, I haven't arrived, but I think that even gurus out there say, I don't know who said this, Brandon, you tell me, the chop wood and carry water thing.
I can't remember exactly either.
Okay. I don't know if it was like, Ram Dass's guru or or somebody who said that. I mean, I'm sure it's really old. It sounds very like Indian or something. I don't know.
Chop wood, carry water. It's like, just do your dharma, basically. Do your job. Just do it.
Just keep doing what you're doing, I think, is like, and do it humbly, do it without, without showing off, without, wanting necessarily something from it, wanting, somebody to validate you or anything like that, but just do it because it's what you're doing. It's how you live life. And you live your day-to-day life.
Do it
following
without the expectation.
golden.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, do it without the expectation of reward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I guess I'm just living my life as best I can, following the golden rule and loving people non-judgmentally as best I can. And that's, to me, I've boiled it down to that at this point.
Yeah. And where I started, once I kind of woke up to realize this world wasn't exactly what we're told, is I started my website, morelawsmoreproblems.com, back in like 2013. And it did start as a blog. I just started writing about issues that I saw because of the whole Handy Sook thing that happened here with the firearms incident. They were trying to pass all these crazy laws here in Connecticut. So I used to argue with people on Facebook, but then I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to start writing about it. Just writing logically how it doesn't make sense and put it down. And that's what I did, and basically led to this. And what I'm working on these days really is the non-judgment thing. That's the big one that I'm working on. I think that's really one of the hardest things that I've tried to attempt to do, but I've been doing it and it's been yielding positive results when I can remember to not judge people. But yeah, it's a practice. Like we said, you're going to fail. But the key is to not get upset or get discouraged when you fail. You always have another opportunity to do it again. You just keep doing it. And then one day it'll just kick in like a natural, normal habit, I guess, but a positive habit.
Yes, indeed.
Another thing too is meetups. I've been going around and meeting up with people, like meeting up with bears or just meeting up with friends that are like-minded and spending time with them, because I think that is another form of healing, because you can express yourself, you could express your true self around people and talk about these ideas and come to different conclusions. And that's another really good form of healing that I found.
It is. I recently over the weekend just went to 2 meetups. It was funny. One of them was for the Flat Earth group that is here, kind of just people through David Wise's app who send each other messages and then just say, hey, we're going to have a meetup. And then the next one was for the American States Assembly, which is a group that I'm involved with for sovereignty purposes. But yeah, that was really good because there was a lot of like-minded people. And I even invited people from one of them to the other one. So that was fun. And some of them showed up. So it was really
Nice
cool.
little crossover. Yeah, that's super important because as you're doing a lot of this work, you could feel alone. And that's another thing that could bring the despair into your life. So when you're around other people who agree or who just accept it and who want to listen to all these crazy things that nobody in your family wants to listen to at Thanksgiving, it's really powerful. And that's why we always say make internet friends real. That's what we did. We went out to Sedona, a bunch of crazy people. And it was even when I went to Colorado and visited Sarcastic, and Cass, it was just amazing hanging out with all those people. And a lot of those are probably going to be in the chat. So, hey guys, I can't wait to do it again.
Yeah. Maybe for your birthday.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
We'll see. But yeah, but yeah, I mean, this show is something that just really been really fun for me and Brandon. But not just fun. It's been very healing, I think, for us both and for other people, as we've heard from others. And one of the things Brandon mentioned is that it's like local. You go out and you buy your local farm food. This is kind of our local, even though we're not local to each other, but we're not mainstream or anything like that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Our POVs, our point of views are local. We all kind of feel the same about a lot of things. So we're talking this out and we're providing kind of local farm food for people who are like-minded, really. That's what we're doing here. These ideas and these things that we talk about and ask questions about. And the goals that we had with the show, really what we hope to accomplish are just getting people out of that despair mode, letting them know that there's other people out there that think the same way that they do and, that could talk about these ideas and not be afraid of it. And obviously laughter, because I think laughter is the best medicine. That's why I started to do comedy and stuff. And I just like to be funny. I think it's really healing when people are laughing, even if they don't agree with you. If you can get them to laugh about something, it's like the foot in the door,
I always get comments about my laugh.
How dare they?
I know. No, actually, it's funny. This weekend, my friend Bianca was like, I missed your laugh, because I hadn't seen her in a while.
Yeah, it's very healing. Definitely. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I love to make Sharon laugh. I feel like a world-class comedian when I do it, because exactly. It's so validating, but it's great. And also the other goal is to kind of just show everybody that everything is perfect. Things that are working out in this world and what we see in front of us are just the results of what has happened before. And it's just like when you throw a rock into a pond, the waves are out there and they're going to keep going until they dissipate on their own, really. And you could either fight against them or you could kind of go with the flow. And that's what we try to do here. So
go with the flow. We're surfing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Wigsplat says.
Exactly. Surfing on those waves, and so thank you guys so much for listening to our show and being in the chat, commenting, sending us your comments. All that stuff is really
sending
great.
Us DMs, personal DMs, thanking us.
Yeah, it's really awesome. We really appreciate it. It gives us the fuel to keep this fire going. Awesome. Yay. Well, we've reached the end of our notes. And so that's it for the show, but I don't want to be too abrupt and just end it. So we'll, hang out for a second, I guess.
You're fine.
So what do you think, Sharon? Do you enjoy this show or what? I think this is a really good one.
I did. I thought this was a really fun show. In particular. Yeah.
I like to provide solutions to people, because a lot of times what we talk about could sound very judgmental when we talk about what we see going on in the world and, people building the Tower of Babel with society and in cities trying to rival nature and stuff. So it's good to talk about what we've done. And why don't you guys let us know what you've done in the comments? What's your shadow work, or what's helped you? What books have you read? What videos? Share them. Let us know. We'll check them out and we'll share them with other people too. Maybe we'll even talk about them. I mean, David R. Hawkins was brought up, like we said, our friend Joe P, he put me onto that. And I mean, we basically made part of a whole episode out of it. So,
Yeah, pretty much. That's something else we didn't mention that we've been doing is a lot of reading, a lot of listening to audiobooks and reading books. I mean, some of the quotes that we've given from different episodes have quotes from books that I've just been recently reading as well. So
yeah, like that
that's another
Ramdas
thing too.
quote.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, you know how to support us. You could be in the chat, like we said, leave us comments. Make sure you hit thumbs up, subscribe to the show, share it with people who you think that it might resonate with, and
Share on.
share on. And what do we say to the good people, Sharon?
That if you're not oversharing,
Then you're totally not caring.
that's
So,
right.
share on.